Hello, everybody. Welcome to Democracy Days. It's Wednesday the 17th, and I am who am I? I'm Professor Marvin Tobias. I guess the topic I'm presenting on relates to responses to tragedy and political capital, using the lens of psychology to try to make sense of why politicians do what they do, and how it plays. I don't have a PowerPoint, it's just, no, you're good. It's gonna be focused on using a psychological lens to try and explain why politicians sometimes do what they do, and how it impacts us as we watch and follow them. As I normally do these type of presentations, I am gonna start with a couple of words for you, things to define, which hopefully you could connect with. First idea is social identity. This is like a lot of feedback back and forth. Does this work better? Does it sound better to you? All right, social identity. Social identity is what we all have because we all have these different things in our lives that are important to us. And social identity is just the idea that these different things or these different objects or these different ideas that I have, they play an important part of who I am. The person most influential in this is Henry Tajfel, and he basically said that whatever group you're in, whatever group you define yourself as part of, that group decides to have some degree of importance in your life. What he actually did is he identified this term called the minimal group paradigm. And this is just the fact that being a part of any group, it doesn't matter if it's important or not important, you see that group more favorably than an outside group. Here's an example. I teach psychology class, and I don't know if you've been in the classrooms over here. The rooms are divided into left side of the classroom and the right side of the classroom. I had the students on the left side of the classroom and the students on the right side of the classroom compete on a task where all they had to do was identify logos. Like, do you know the McDonald's logo? Do you know the Taco Bell logo? Do you know the Pizza Hut logo? That's all they had to do. And they were only divided by simply being on the left side of the room or the right side of the room. And so they worked hard on this task, and I said, what are your answers? And a student on the left side of the room cursed out the students on the right side of the room for getting more right. They had no degree of importance at all, simply left side or right side. That's all that mattered for them actually to say, my group, I look at favorably, your side, your effing side cheated. And then they responded like, no, we did, we just know more stuff. So we're fighting in a classroom on who can identify a McDonald's or a Pizza Hut logo. And it's not always just stuff like that. Like even in our lives, like, my wife loves Harry Potter. My son loves Harry Potter. And they take the Harry Potter test. What are you? You Gryffindor. You must be Slytherin. And so they argue back and forth over something as minimal as a test that says you are Gryffindor or you are Slytherin. That is social identity. Those are areas that aren't even important, but because it's a group that I assign myself to, it becomes important. And so I start to look at my group as the favorite group. That's social identity theory. You can find that in every aspect and part of your life. The high school you cheer for, which, the sports team you cheer for. Cardinals are the best fans, well, not this year, but Cardinals are the best fans. Cubs fans suck. Blues are the best at hockey. We're going to punch a Red Wing in the face today. All these are just identities that we tend to have. So that's term number one. Term number two, to understand how political elites is just a fact. Psychology has this term called motivated reasoning, which is simply saying we rationalize and explain behaviors to ensure that we ourselves still think of ourselves as good people. We're motivated to make sure how I see myself is consistent, which also means How I see my group is consistent. Most people in this room don't walk around like, man, you know what? I'm not moral. I suck at life. I hope to be an addict. You don't do that. You say, I want to be a good student. I want to be a good coworker. My boyfriend or girlfriend, I hope they love me just like I love them. Because we want to make ourselves appear consistent. You ever taken, I don't even have to ask because you're in class, like, have you ever had a test? This is how motivated reasoning works. Have you ever had a test and you know you studied for that test? Like, I studied hard for this test. I'm gonna go in this classroom. I'm gonna crush it. I'm gonna so crush this test because I actually studied this time. I looked hard, I studied, I looked at everything. There's no way I'm not gonna get a grade on the test. You take the test and you super bomb it. You sit down, you're like, what? This was a no study guide ever. No way, shape, or form. What just happened? Motivated reasoning says this: you don't look at yourself as a failure. So there's no way I failed this test. You talk to your friend. Hey, what'd you get on it? I bombed it too. Man, that professor, they didn't teach us right. Those questions were tricky. This stuff wasn't even in the book. There's something wrong with him. You're going to look at that particular individual as having the issue or problem because I'm motivated to see myself as a good person who did good job, and the group that I'm a part of, they're also good, and they do good work. If you had gotten an A on that test, you wouldn't question anything about your exam because the test matches how you see yourself. Term number 1, social identity, understanding how we can be manipulated when we're exposed to political elites. Term number 2, motivated reasoning. What rationale do I give to explain what happens out there in society and how it makes myself look good? Those are the 2 major psychological terms. Political capital is just the idea of which it's kind of ambiguous. So for me, the idea is political capital is I'm going to use this event out here in space to try to convince individuals that I, as a political leader, can be trusted and I can help you in your problem. I'm going to take this event out here to convince you, the individuals, that I, political person, can help you with your problems. Now, I do have to give a quick caveat or a disclaimer. When I came up with this presentation, this was like in the spring. And so the whole emphasis was on Hurricane Katrina. 20 years later, the response to Katrina, the response to natural disasters. But that was in the spring. So the idea was, I'm going to use political responses to natural disasters and how it influences how we look at those individuals and ourselves, typically along party lines. But then, things have happened since the spring, which kind of changed the presentation just a little bit. And so I have to let you know as a disclaimer that some part of the presentation is going to seem a little weird because it's focused on weather. And then other people are like, no, we have to talk about what's happened since June, where you've had political assassinations, both on, from Melissa Hartman and Charlie Kirk. There were 2 specific school shootings, both in the Annunciation shooting and then an Evergreen shooting. So those are political topics that people have used to try and align a view to their party or to the other party. So I will mention that later, but the initial part was about natural disasters, which typically focused on hurricanes, and I'm going to connect it in a minute. The other thing I have to highlight and stress is that when we were talking about Hurricane Katrina, I was sitting there as they were discussing the idea of Hurricane Katrina, and I sat back, because obviously I was alive when it happened, and I sat there and I was like, I got an idea, because when Hurricane Katrina happened, they had this whole celebrity event going on to try and raise money, and the most the most politicized remark out of all of Hurricane Katrina was my man Kanye West. You know, they're doing a whole celebrity, oh, donate, give money. And then Kanye West looking awkward, standing next to Michael Myers. Michael Myers like, we have to help the people. We have to help the people. We have to help everyone. And then Kanye West like, I don't like how they displaying our families out here, and I could do more. And then Michael Myers was like, hey, we got to help the people. And then Kanye West says, George Bush doesn't like black people. And then they cut to Chris Tucker like, what the hell just happened here? In my head, I'm like, I'm so gonna talk about disasters, and in my biased stance, I'm gonna show you how Bush handled stuff. I'm gonna show you, how Trump handled that, to how Obama handled stuff, and then how Clinton handled stuff. I'm gonna show you, yeah, they're different. And then I dove into the research to highlight how political elites, the presidents, and Congress sell or convince the public that their particular view is right. And the research took me aback for a little bit. It took me back a little bit because I was not expecting what I saw. So let me tell you a little bit about how political partisans or the political elite try and convince the public to see things in their view. The number one thing that a politician, especially a political elite, has to do when it comes to disaster is try to convince you to trust them. They want you to trust them because I know what I'm talking about. The number one need that individuals have that are dealing with a natural disaster is some degree of assistance. Get people here to help build, get people here to help with funding, get people here to help us get safe. That's what the voters, that's what we need. And the political view is I want you to know that I can be trusted to handle this. I looked at research that looked at responses from 1970 to 2024. They examined hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, earthquakes, decades of research. And this is what you actually find, which was surprising because I was coming hard for Bush. Okay, this is what I actually found. Between 1970 and 1980, about 1988, regardless of who was in Congress, regardless of the president, their initial response was to convince everyone, our party is not as important as the people. It didn't matter the political affiliation. They all gave the same message. Now people debate, was the message true? But they all gave the same message. We, us, it's not Democrat, Republican, it's not moderate. We, us, I can handle it. It didn't matter if it was Reagan, it didn't matter if it was Carter, it didn't matter if it was both Bushes, although the first Bush messed up one response. It didn't matter. They all said the same thing. We, as people, can handle this particular situation. After 1988, we looked to the president even more for more federal assistance. Give us more help. And what you find is that overwhelmingly, regardless of Democrat or Republican, they all said, leader, we are the party to help you because there's no parties anymore. It's us, the people. It didn't matter what was happening. Now, here's where things in psychology gets kind of odd because that's what they said. I feel like I'm screaming at you. That's what they said. But then in research, you start to say, okay, how did they show it? How did they allocate funds? In 1988, the Congress passed the Stafford Act. For those that don't know, FEMA hasn't always been in existence. FEMA was a Carter thing in the 70s, and the Stafford Act gives the president the ability to kind of offer more federal assistance. And so what researchers start to do is like, the politicians are saying this. We are here to help you. There are no parties. And if that's the case, presidents should declare disasters regardless of where the state is, if it's a swing state, if it's based on an election or not election, severity of the disaster does not matter because the president already said there are no parties. It's just the people. But here's what we found, which is going to go back to social identity. One, presidents that make a disaster declaration, which means I'm going to release more funds because of your disaster, the disaster that that state's dealing with, which is usually going to be hurricanes, because that batters the coast a lot. We do find that there is some partisanship in that, whether they know it or not. What does that mean? If I'm the president and the governor matches my party, you're more likely going to get a disaster declaration in a hurricane that is not extremely severe or extremely minor. There's no president anywhere that's saying, you know what, the governor matches me, I do it. No, their political alignment matches. And so they unwittingly, I'm here for you, but the disaster declaration is dependent on if the governor aligns. That's a problem because people don't control disasters. You don't control something happening to you. This does not mean that if I'm a Democrat and the governor's Republican, you won't get aid. That's not what that means. It simply means that if I'm a Democrat and the governor's Republican, I evaluate the threat of the storm or the damage differently, and I don't realize that I'm doing it. But if it's a category 4 or 5, it didn't matter. It's only those, we're not quite sure. And so the idea starts to percolate like, well, wait a minute. If that's what the presidents are doing, and that's actually the president or the House of Congress, the members of Congress, it doesn't vary for that regard. So then people start to ask the question, well, that's what the presidents are doing. What about the voters themselves? What are they doing? In political theory, the idea is that voters are more, when it comes to disasters, they're kind of blind. And so they basically blame the authority figure, not so much for the disaster, but for the relief that you provide. And it doesn't matter what party you are. I need help. Did you help or not? Party doesn't matter. Did you help me or did you not help me? Party makes no difference. Drink of water. Because we have to remember again, through the lens of politics, the officials that are elites are conveying the same message to the public as that you can trust me, I can fix it. But now the voters have to say, can I really trust you? Based on my political affiliation, based on my political view that matches or part of my social identity. One of the biggest studies that focused on this, or a key part that they focused on for this one, was in 2012, when there was a hurricane called Superstorm Sandy. And that occurred about a month before the election. That was the Barack Obama-Mitt Romney election. Superstorm Sandy hit. Obama did what every other president before him did. Democrat or Republican, we're here for the people. There are no parties. That's what he said. Because it matches what every other president says. I got you, I got you, I got you. But here's what we found. For voters, if I am the same party as you, and you provide aid to me, I look positively on you. If I'm of the opposite party, and you provide aid to me, my view of you doesn't change. The same behavior by the president, the only distinction was the political lens that we saw the situation happening. If I'm a Democrat and he helped me, awesome, what he's supposed to. If I'm a Republican and that's a Democrat, he could have done more. The same exact behavior, because all the president does when it comes to a disaster is assign a declaration and then visit the area. That's all they can do. The funds from that point is at the state or local level. But it wasn't just him, because when you start to go backwards, you realize it was the same situation in every other election cycle. People who matched the political party's president felt positive about the same relief that everybody got, which is the political lens that we see things. This isn't the politicians saying, hey, I'm Democrat, I'm gonna help the Democrats. This is them saying, we're all in this together. But our political view slants how we see the assistance. The unique thing about that one is that at that time, Mitt Romney said, as a Republican, That's what killed me in that election. The hurricane killed me. Doug Christie, Republican, destroyed his political career by literally saying, thank you for providing assistance, which is what a president is supposed to do. So in that regard, presidents tend to say or do the same thing. The issue when we talk about our social identity is that we're now evaluating them differently because of our polarization. It gets so frustrating. That's not in my notes. The frustration statement wasn't in my notes. That's just my own notes. Here's, you actually want to counter that with, nope, not going to do that. If we move slightly away from the natural disasters to the tragedies that are more man-driven, what you find, again, presidents and the political elite say the same thing. When Ronald Reagan had an attempted assassination, gosh, I feel old now because, you know, he was president. Okay, he was shot. He was shot by an individual who thought Jodie Foster told him to do it, so that's just different. Shot, going to the hospital. He made a joke. He's like, man, I hope, you know, I hope there are no Democrats in this hospital or something like that. And the surgeon was like, no, we're all Republicans. Nah, we're all in this together. His first speech after that was about we're unifying, we're gonna be together. That's what he did. In 1986, when the Challenger exploded, which was no one's fault, he said we're all in this together. And in some ways, some people classified him as the comforter, the president of comfort. That's what he does. The whole message is the same, as you can trust me because I'm all about seeing us as people that have some slightly different political views. That was Reagan. That's what he said. That's what he did. And there was no bipartisanship, there was no partisanship. It was unified in the fact that, yes, he suffered this, yes, we're in this together with slightly political views. Bush, W, 9/11, his evaluation stunk after Katrina because he destroyed the trust of the individuals that were impacted by it. But when 9/11 happened, all you had were images of him standing on rubble with a bullhorn and a flag. We've got this America, right? He said that. His approval rating hasn't been matched by anyone ever. It was over 90% of people approved of Bush at that moment because he went with the idea that the meta identity, the large identity, isn't Republican, it is American. That was Bush. Because I'm always going to try and highlight that I'm not focusing on one area next, because if you don't know, I'm a wee bit on the liberal side. I'm giving Republican examples as well. Clinton, 1995, Oklahoma City, which is one of the largest current terrorist activities by a homegrown terrorist. And if you don't know what that is, make sure you look up Oklahoma City. We'll get to that later. Clinton, we are not going to let extremism destroy our country. That is not what American values are. That's what he said. Bipartisan across the board. Now, when people heard it, even though they were not against Clinton at all, even if they were against Clinton, they were like, that was it. Because it's bigger than that. We have to have an Oklahoma response to things where we treat each other with honesty and dignity. That was in the 90s. Charleston church shooting, Obama, 2015. Literally, we're Americans, we're in this together. You can trust me, we're gonna make sure this individual is brought to justice across the board. And that was at a time when people were evaluating parties differently. About 2007 and 2008, we started to see some partisanship or polarization where people start to dislike the other party. But on that regard, there wasn't. And what made that actually unique is that you didn't have people excusing anything. It was simply supremacy, white supremacy is wrong. No. That was 2015. Scalise in 2017, which has been in the news now because for a lot of different reasons. Scalise shooting, Republican senator shot. The person who shot him had different views and worked as part of Bernie Sanders, as a volunteer in Bernie Sanders' campaign. Across the board, this is wrong, this is not who we are, mimicking Bush, mimicking Reagan, mimicking Clinton. This is not who we are. This is not who we are. This is not who we are. Sanders, I'm sickened. This is not the American value that we have. And no matter how much you politically disagree with his view, people said, yeah, that's what an elite or politically elected official is supposed to do. Because that's the political lens that we have when we see people engage and interact. That was 2017. 2019, El Paso shooting. In an El Paso shooting, an individual who had an issue with individuals that were Hispanic killed 20 plus, shot 45, killed 20. Across the board, everyone said the same thing. We can't accept this. This is wrong. This is not what Americans are. This is not what we value. Democrats, this is not who we are. This is not what we value. Republicans, not who we are. This is not what we value. And what made that unique, which I'm going to contrast shortly, is that at that time, in 2019, Republicans said supremacy like that, his extremist beliefs, we can't have that, period. That was the political statement from the political elites at that time in 2019. At some point between 2019 and 2025, the lens in which politicians express information is pulling people into this affective polarized difference. An affective polarization, now I feel like I'm gonna jump off the stage. Affective polarization is the idea that I dislike your party so much, it doesn't even matter what my party does. It doesn't matter. So you'll always have people say things like, why would someone vote for that? It's against your interest. Simple, I don't like your party that much. It's the emotionality and the tribalism that I don't like you in existence. So it doesn't matter if this thing benefits me or not, because the most important thing is that your party is the other. And that's what's happened with social identity. Social identity says that we value these groups. Historically, political identity was just that. I have this view that government should be bigger to help those in need. That tends to be more liberal. I have a view that government should be a little bit smaller, and the best way to help people is to allow the small businesses to hire more people. That's the conservative view. That's literally what that is. But this political identity has now morphed into a social identity. So it's not literally big government should help people, it's big government should help people, but I shop at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. What are you? I'm Republican, therefore I like to walk Walmart and drive a truck, like literally. So now it's driving these social engagements. And what's happening is political elites, through the lens, is now saying that that person or that thing is so bad they can't exist. Because they're basing their idea that when political elites use political capital, they want you to trust them. So on my side of the aisle, you're going to trust what I say, that that political idea isn't bad, but that actual person is bad. And I'm going to tell you on my side that you can trust me when I tell you it's not that idea that's bad, it's the person that's bad. And that's where we are right now. Politics or the political elites have gone from identifying when the superordinate value is supposed to be an idea of America to now literally my particular view, my particular party is the only party that can save from destruction. And as we as voters, we're aligning with that. But the political identity is not our actual social identity. It's not the one that drives everything. I don't shop where I shop because of political view. Well, I shop because I need to save money. It's not a political view. The person next to you isn't the bad person simply because they're liberal, and that's actually interesting. That's a whole other story. Like, Democrats and Republicans didn't identify as liberal or conservative. It's I'm a Democrat. I might be more moderate. I may be more liberal, or I might be more conservative. So you had conservative Democrats. Republicans, I might be more liberal, I might be more moderate, I might be more conservative. But we find now they're not even identifying with that. It's, I'm not Democrat, I'm liberal. I'm progressive. Because we're now being pulled to the hyper side of things. Last year, 2024, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton just hit the East Coast. Florida, Carolinas, just like Super Sandy did in 2012. Just like Super Sandy did in 2012, the response was different. Because at that time, we were so separated and polarized that the president did what he was supposed to do. I declared a disaster and I visited the area, which is literally what every other president does. Declare a disaster, declare a disaster. Declare a disaster, visit the area. They all did that. Well, after 1970 or so. Before that, it was kind of weird. The distinction was politics played a role in the response to him and then the misinformation. So people were rejecting him and his idea simply because of his existence there. You must be trying to do something, when that led to the whole idea that the hurricanes were artificially created to impact the election. That's not a thing. You didn't create weather to impact an election. That doesn't happen. But because of the politicalized view that we have, people pull it that way because my party is the party. Your party's the bad party. And so there has to be some way that we can get out of that, because historically, as I did the research, that actually wasn't. I was so gonna come down on, I so was. But then you realize, generally, they all do the same thing, except that's not the case currently. Currently, the political elites are specifically saying, I can save, and anyone who does something different is wrong, period. That's different. That's new. There's not a time in modern history where a political elite who has the biggest stage says the problem in this society is you. That hasn't happened in over 60 years. That's by definition going backwards. And that's not an opinion. That's not. That's a factual statement. Here's what Democrats and Republicans agree on today. Here's what they agree on today. And again, this is from Pew Research. Look it up, 2024. They agree that, one, at an 80% rate, they can't agree on what the facts are. 80% of Republicans and 80% of Democrats agree we can't agree on facts. That's what they say. What's the problem in American society? Right-wing violence, left-wing violence. 78% of Democrats say right-wing violence. 78 to 80% of Republicans say left-wing violence. Moderates like, hell, man, what the I guess I'm in the middle. And actually they are, because they say they're actually more 30% right-wing, about 18% left-wing, but they're like, I don't know what's happening right now. So the people themselves, which is where we are, we have to fight the idea that this political party that I'm a part of is the entire essence of who I am, when they're not. So how do you offset the lens that we are looking at? Because they're gonna do what they're gonna do. So how do we change the lens that we look at, or that we are looking at? And because sometimes I do stuff. I like reading. That's when you say, I like reading too. I don't know. You like reading? No, okay. Well, okay, that's cool too. Book report. Now, I'm not being flippant. This is a good book to start with, because it doesn't use a lot of scientific research on every other page. And it doesn't say the problem is Democrats, the problem is liberals. It doesn't do that in any way, shape, or form. Part of the problem is that we essentialize people. If you're a Democrat or liberal, you believe this. And that's not really how people work. But this is a good book to read. It says, good, reasonable people, the psychology behind America's Dangerous Divide. I'll hold it up. I get no money for this. I'm just giving you resources to start. This is it's not a difficult read. I could give you more that are harder to read simply because sometimes academics write for themselves. He's not writing for himself. Side note, I will admit, he's a professor of psychology and neuroscience. So if your view is that because he's a psychology professor of neuroscience, then he's gonna try and do something like brainwashing, he's not. He doesn't blame any side because if you don't know this, whether I claim to be liberal or I claim to be conservative, whether I go extreme or not, the neuroscience says my brain does not change. It does not. The brain pattern of someone who is radicalized doesn't vary whether it's liberal or conservative. The brain doesn't know the difference. It only knows that it gets excited by some types of content. It doesn't know. Okay, so that's a good start. Second, you didn't hear that or see that. The second thing we have to do is that we have to challenge the two notions when it comes to motivated reasoning. And motivated reasoning, which goes back to my identity, is I am a good person. The group that I'm a part of, they're good people as well. I'm not saying challenge yourself so you say, am I a good person or not? I'm not, oh no. No, challenge your group that you identify with. Are they always doing the good thing? And if they're not, that's not me saying, I'm gonna switch political parties. That's me saying, you know what? That kind of sucked. That's a bad idea. That's the hard part because for some, that political identity is so much of who they are. Here's the irony. And again, it's on the left and the right. This is the irony. I go to church, right? And I go to church with a guy. Well, I go to church with a lot of people, but okay, I go to church with a guy. He's a friend of mine. He was. I'm at church, and obviously everything that's happened, we have different views on things that have happened. I'm just gonna put that out there. He turned to me. I don't share my views, especially on social media, because I don't know, I like peace. He turned to me. He said, how could you be, he was like, you're godless. I was like, I'm in church with you, player. What just happened here? We're in church together. Because to him, his political view had morphed into this bigger view. And all he had to do was take a step back and say, hey, you can see your party as you want to, but you have to recognize that doesn't match who you say you are. And you can call that out, that's fine. Do that 100%. We can still, do our thing in church together. First, read the book. Second, challenge the fact that the group that I'm a part of doesn't always do the best, especially today, because just the fact there are political elites saying things that have the biggest microphone that haven't been done in decades. That's just a fact about it. Third, people are against social media. If you ever take my class, social media is just this entity. It doesn't inherently mean it's evil or bad, which some people suggest. It's all about how the algorithms work. If you're utilizing social media, just recognize, which is also challenging yourself, you just recognize that regardless of what sphere you're in, it's an echo chamber. So if I'm liberal, I'm gonna get a bunch of liberal stuff, which means I'm also gonna get stuff from people that are further left than me that say stuff I don't agree with. But that also means that someone who says they're conservative in their echo chamber, they're getting stuff on the far right that we don't roll with, because those are extremes. Recognize that social media use, it's gonna have the extremes. So anytime someone says, those on the left, those on the right, yeah, on the extreme side, yeah, that guy has 1,000 followers. There's 300+ million people just in the US, 8 billion people worldwide, and about 4 billion people use social media. So that guy that got 1,000 followers, I'm happy for that, but I still don't do that. That's not who I am. And what I identify with, that's outside the norm. Read the book. Challenge your view of the group that you're in. Recognize what social media is doing. And fourth, which of this particular research I'm going to tell you it right now. A mega study testing 25 treatments to reduce anti-democratic attitudes and partisan animosity. The number one way to reduce partisan animosity as well as violence, correct democratic misinformation. Correct misinformation. The number one way that we can help our democratic society be more democratic, we have to correct misinformation. And sometimes that might require using facts, but people always focus on their lived experiences. So sometimes it might be connecting with individuals and saying, I hear what you're saying, I got what you're saying. I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but I hear what you're saying. I understand how you could feel that way or believe that way. This is actually what things are going like, so I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. But you have to correct misinformation. It has to be, because you can't have a democratic society where people believe things that are false. And if we're at a place right now where most Democrats and most Republicans can only agree that they can't agree on facts, we got to do something. We got to do something different. We got to do something different. And I did this presentation about like 3 years ago in 2022, and in 2022 I said, hey, just tolerate and compromise. And then stuff just got weirder and worse. So I'm not saying I'm still saying tolerate and compromise, but I was more optimistic in 2022 than I am right now, because going generationally, my gen, we sucked. We messed stuff up. So I need millennials, and I guess your polars or alphas or whatever you are, I need you guys to actually be the ones that are gonna do the change, because we screwed the pooch on this. But that's what I thought. Is my time? I'm good. I just looked at a blank screen. But you know what? We can all agree there's nothing on the screen, so we're already at 100% of fact. Okay, that's what I have for today. Am I supposed to open up for questions or something? Oh, yeah, I can. This is really awkward now for me, because like they're showing up, and I feel like, should I keep talking? Should I not? What should I do? I'm looking for direction from someone. What should I do? What should I do? What should I? What? Sure. Water bottle. Do you have questions for? Oh my gosh. Do you have questions for me? Be sure to ask questions, because you know for your extra credit, you're probably going to have something on there. I have a question. Oh, yes.
So let's say my family unit or my prayer unit is a group that is really committed to their psychology of truth, right? But I feel very differently, and it causes me a lot of stress and anxiety in my life. Do you have any recommendations for how I can better cope with that?
Yoga?
Psychologically?
Oh, psychologically? Here's the thing with that, which people know already. In psychology, we know for a fact you can't change a person's mind. 100% you can't. The only thing that you can do is introduce an idea. The person has to think to themselves, do I want to think about the idea? So if it's your piece that's getting ruined because it's not theirs, the only thing that you could do at your point is change how you interpret it. Meaning, for my piece, you know how I feel about this thing. I don't agree with your view on this thing. But for my piece, this is what I'm gonna do. In some ways, it might have to separate, but still come back to that conversation 1, 2, 3 months later. And I said yoga is funny, but yes, meditation. Find a place where you have some degree of peace. Mindfulness. Mindfulness is being aware that I'm being upset about something. But those are things that we have to do for ourselves, because we cannot change a person's mind. Side note, could you ask about that? I don't know if I should walk down this street. Side note, a professor or a college can't change your mind. A professor or a college can't give you information that makes you all of a sudden do something. We don't have that. Believe me, as a professor, there's, if I could change your mind to love reading, Oh my God, I would. No matter how much I say I love reading, I've never had a student come back later, Tobias, you convinced me reading. No. You know who convinces people to do things? Peers. Peers convince people, especially on colleges' campuses, peers convince their college roommates more than faculty ever have. 3 studies will confirm it if you doubt me. College roommates make greater influences on your life than that random physics professor. I guarantee you. Sorry, but that was that. Good. But no, I'm here. Hey, I'm just gonna randomly say hi to people. Hi, how are you? I'm living my best life. How are you? You're good? How are you? Sure, you. You're phenomenal. Multiple syllable words. We've all been there. That's not the most positive. How are you? Pretty good. How are you? Thumbs up. Chilling. Oh, chilling. Oh, no, I'm just going to walk around because someone's going to ask me a question unless I do that weird thing. Hey, how are you? You would have been better if someone was yelling in your ear all day.
Someone hadn't been yelling in my ear all day about stuff, I would have been better.
I apologize for that.
My parents always have to yell in my ear every day, and it's very, very irritating.
Parents always try to look out. Well, they sometimes do. How are you? Surviving? Sometimes that's enough. And that's okay as well, because you don't have to be amazingly positive and happy. No, I'm just going to keep doing this until Sarah says you're done.
Just wondering, how do you think like COVID affected all the political parties, like right, who's wrong, all of that?
Who's right, who's wrong, who's okay, COVID. Here's what's funny about COVID. We had at least 2 different viral strains that weren't at that level in which presidents did things differently. Bush had one, Obama had one. Obama actually overpromised. So with swine, he's like, I got you, I got you, I got you. And then he didn't have it. So he actually tried to overpromise. He actually underdelivered. Bush, there was an H1 variant there. He did it fine. At a different time period, they did what they were supposed to do. I got you. And one was good, one fell short because people think I'm liberal. He did it wrong. That's fine. What COVID did is it introduced the idea that there is only one particular party that speaks truth and the other one is going to lie and manipulate. And then you have to then come up with a way to combat that party's misinformation. And it's not like every conservative or every Republican was like, no, it's fake, it's false. It's just the loudest one kept repeating it. Now, did they get some things about COVID right or some things about COVID wrong? Yeah, because that's what science does. But I think it increased the level of distrust generally, but also because the individuals that are in power that you listen to sometimes were saying things to encourage more distrust. And so that causes further separation because I have to trust someone, and we do find that when it comes to trust versus mistrust, that's a whole other research topic. So I think that had a really negative outcome because people didn't look more broadly. So you could argue, for example, like, I'm not gonna get into an argument. I think it had a really negative impact, but we were already starting to become polarized from 2007, 2008. That's when you start to see a lot of research about political and polarization. It's just that people themselves didn't always align their political view with who they were. And that's what we're starting to see now. My political view is literally who I am. And that's political views should be just that. And usually political views are literally about size of government. Literally, it's historically been about the size of government. Should government help people? Should government not help people? Because like FEMA for itself, before the 70s, state and local governments tried to help themselves. And after that, it's like, okay, maybe the federal government can help. Now people look to federal government for help. And now it's just, they're crooked, they're lying, they're manipulating, whether, like, no, they're not. It's just a lot of people to help. Thank you for your question. all day, every day. I do this 4 times a week, all day. Weird dance move. Okay. For those that showed up, you showed up, you showed out. Thank you for your questions and your engagement, or at least listening. If your phone was calling you, that's good as well. It's not illegal to have the phone in the auditorium. And again, I don't think I changed your mind. I just tried to highlight that we have gone from the idea of having this broader American value system where we respect and respect, humility, understanding of other people, to literally from the biggest pulpit, demon devil, I'm right. And that just can't exist. We literally can't exist that way. It can't. All right, I got nothing. I'm just gonna stand here with the mic on. Off. On. Can I turn it off? I feel important.